Good evening. Good evening? Oh, that's better. Thought I'd be talking to myself there for a minute. I'm glad this podium's short because I'm a North Queensland rainforest Murray and we're all short people. But they say a lot of us got big mouths, so. First of all, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land that I stand on and the elders of this land. Thank you for welcoming me to your country, all the way from Cyclone Territory. And thank you to the Rona Tranby Trust people for bringing this important occasion to life. Wanjirabama, Nayu Kunganji, Yarrabah, Nayu Bumba, Kunganji. Yo, Wanjira, hello. I'm a Kunganji woman from Yarrabah. My language name, traditional name, is Bunya Bajil, means lovely lady. So I hope I'll be a lovely lady tonight. Yeah, that name was given to me by our late queen of the Kunganji tribe, and she gave me that name when I turned 21. I still am 21. Just kidding. And I'd like to acknowledge also some of my family are here tonight from Yarrabah, but they live in Sydney. So wherever you are, in the crowd here somewhere, make sure that Yarrabah stays in you while you're down here, and share some of that stories that you have. I'd like to start off by saying that Blow'em, the story of the Yarrabah Brass Band. First of all, Blow'em came about, the expression Blow'em in my community is an expression of amazement. So if somebody's done something amazing or out of the ordinary, usually you'll hear someone say, blow 'em, eh? You know, it's sort of like, wow, the wow factor. So appropriately, I thought that this project, the Indigenous story of Indigenous brass bands, had the name Blow 'em, and because it was a story of Indigenous men, Aboriginal men, that blew brass instruments. So couldn't be more appropriate than that. First, and I want to tell you a little bit about how Blow'em came about. I was contacted by Queensland Performing Arts a while ago, and while I was living in Townsville, and they needed someone to work on a project with Leah Purcell on Black Chicks Talking. So as a curator, they contacted me to be part of that project and to help bring that Black Chicks Talking together as an exhibition. So as we were working on it, it turned out that components of Black Chicks Talking couldn't go ahead. So me being an opportunist, had the opportunity to present another story when QPAC said, well, we've now got this space that we need to fill. Do you know of any stories? And so I was rubbing my hands, and I said, yes, I know the story that you could tell. It's an amazing story, will blow people's minds, and no one's really heard about it. And I said, it's a story of Indigenous brass bands. And so when I mentioned that, the people at QPAC sort of already had this wow factor, because they had never heard of Aboriginal men that blew brass instruments in the early 1900s. And they said, well, how do you know about this? I said, well, I remember hearing the elders talking about these bands. And I remember seeing a photo as a young child of a couple of our grandfathers blowing instruments. And so that kind of stuck in my mind for such a long time that I knew that one day this story will come out. And then it was that time when I was asked for a special story. As this story developed, I did the research for over 12 months, and there was hardly anything there that you could that was in your face kind of stuff to tell you about the history of Indigenous brass bands. So there's a lot of research, a lot of digging around, a lot of phone calls, a lot of talking to elders and stuff. But as it developed, it was almost as if the old people were saying, this story has to be told. It has to come out. So the more and more that I researched it, there was just amazing things that were happening that blew my mind. And I knew that it was part of the elders being there, making things happen. And so when we had received the Rona Tranby Trust Award, for which I'm really grateful for, because it made it possible for us to go and talk to surviving members of the Indigenous brass bands, and to go on the trip to some of those communities. Just to give you an example, we found out that there was a surviving brass band member from Mona Mona. For those who don't know where Mona Mona is, if you know Kuranda, up in North Queensland near Cairns, Mona Mona was one of those communities that was set aside by the early settlers, and it was a community that when you drive there, it's like 2-hour drive by dirt road. So anyway, we, with the money that came from Rona Tranby Trust, we went up to Kuranda, and I said, I don't know how we're going to find this lady. They said she's around, but we don't know where she is or where she's living. So myself and Queensland Performing Arts staff and our Indigenous filmmaker with us that did the documentary, we walked up to this little shop, and Kuranda's a little touristy town, and there was this old lady sitting outside of the shop with their groceries. And I said to the other ladies with me, I said, I'll go over and ask Auntie over here if she knows Velma Green. So I go over and I said, oh, hello, Auntie, how are you? Introduced myself. She said, hello. I said, we're up here doing a story and I'm looking for a lady called Velma Green. She said, I'm Velma Green and I need a lift to Mona Mona. So we took her out to Mona Mona with the 2 bags of groceries and talked all the way and did the stories and did the filming and stuff. And her story was so amazing. I cried during the interview because one of the most striking things that she said to me, because only 2 women were part of the Mona Mona Brass Band, but they also blew lemon leaves. And so Velma was, she said, being part of the brass band gave you a sense of freedom, because it was almost as if it was one of those certificates that you needed to get out of community, exemption ticket. And she said if you wanted to get out of community, you had to be part of the brass band, but only special people could get in if they were able to play. And then she went on to say, she said when we went on our first tour, she said I had never seen the ocean before. And she said just saw this old field of grass, because where Mona Mona is, it's surrounded by mountains. She said, I didn't know what was over that mountain. She said, but I knew that once I got over that mountain, being part of the brass band, I would see the ocean for the first time. So in that, there was this sort of joy, but also anguish of being part of a system where the elders, the older people had to survive. And so hearing those words where she said, I'd never seen the ocean before, but when I saw the field of green grass, she said it made me look and made me feel like I was part of the ocean. and never been part of the ocean before. And then we heard all these other stories from Velma, that she played the guitar and she played the bass, and she was like 60, 70 years old. And I'm thinking, the talent that comes from North Queensland. But Velma's still around to tell the story, and she was very grateful to be part of the documentary. And as I said, there's a lot of things that happen, and it was part of something spiritual that was happening, to say this story has to be told. And just another story of amazement. We had pulled up into Townsville Airport because we were about to fly to Palm Island and interview two of the surviving members from Palm Island, and a male and a female. And so we rang Palm Island Council, and they said, oh, we don't know where these two people are. They're supposed to be here in Palm Island. They know yous are coming. And so our plane got delayed. The sky went black, and we were sitting at Townsville Airport waiting for the storm to go so we could fly over to Palm Island. So I said to the ladies, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to sit here for a couple of hours now, and hopefully we'll find the auntie and the uncle. So we're sitting there, and then all of a sudden we hear this really loud noise of an old car coming around the corner. And so car comes around, hear the door slam, and then in comes these two people that we were going to Palm Island for. It turned out they were couples, and they couldn't get to Palm Island, but they knew we were coming, but they were trying to get away from us because they were camera shy. So they ended up at Townsville Airport, so we chucked them in the car with us and did the interview at one of the ladies' place who lived there in Townsville. So that's just some of the things that happened in developing the brass band story. And if I told you all the others, you could probably, I could probably write a book about this, and of the amazing things that happen. Out of the documentary with the Rona Tranby Trust help and support, we were able to do the documentary. We were able to do the exhibition of the Indigenous brass bands. And we not only talked about Yarrabah Brass Band, but we found that there were 9 Indigenous brass bands altogether. And most of them came from North Queensland and one in Western Australia. And we also found that, interestingly, the bands that were in New South Wales, there wasn't really a brass band, but you guys down here at a band that played gum leaves. And they walked across the Sydney Harbour Bridge playing the gum leaves. So there's some really amazing stuff out there. So we had the documentary, we had the exhibition which toured various places in North Queensland, and went as far as Weipa, and in Brisbane as well, and out west, and to Townsville, in as well as some small towns along the way. The other thing that came out of that was possible because of the documentary and the oral histories was that we were able to write a play for Queensland Arts Council, who commissioned me to write a play about the Yarrabah Brass Band Story. So the play was cutting edge. It ended up touring Queensland schools for 4 years, and they had never had a play before that toured that long. And nonetheless by an Indigenous person. So that was just another milestone in the possibilities that came out of documentaries, out of oral histories. And the importance of that is in oral histories is that it's used as a tool for many things, for educating people. It can be used to regenerate families, belief systems, and also recover truth. And that's what came out of all of that. And I'd like to pay respects for some of those elders who have since passed on that we interviewed. 3 of those passed away, 2 last year within weeks of each other, and another one a couple of years after we did the documentary. And interviewing those old fellas and those aunties was just a privilege for me. It was an amazing educational tool for me, hearing from our elders. And I came away satisfied because when we finally did the play, we had an opening of the play in Yarrabah. We took it to Yarrabah, the first one. And we had it for over 2 nights, and it was packed house. There was no room. But one of the things that will forever be in my mind is the words of my grandfather, Henry Formile, who was part of the brass band, Yarrabah Brass Band. He got up there at the end of the show, and he looked at me and with tears in his eyes, and he said, "You've written this and done this, and it's exactly how it happened." And so to me, that was such that was treasure to me. That meant more, hearing from my grandfather saying, giving me the tick and saying, what I seen tonight, it's all true, that's what happened. So I'd like to thank you to the Rona Tranby Trust people and the committee and the board, because your work and your contribution to oral histories is such an important role that without that documentary, without your support, none of this would be possible. I'd like to acknowledge Queensland Performing Arts, Queensland Arts Council, and a lady who couldn't make it tonight who was supposed to be here, Beryl Davis, who was the project officer at the time. She had a passion for getting Indigenous stories out. She was non-Indigenous, but I'd like to thank her for what the support that she gave. Where to from here with Blow'em? Blow'em's like one of those projects that's got a life of its own. You never know what's going to happen next with it. So we've already had calls over the last 12 months. I have had calls about turning it into a feature film, which I would love for that to happen. So any money people out there, this would be a dream come true, because it would be something that everybody would get to see. So once again, thank you to Rona Tranby Trust organisation, and thank you for the stories tonight. And as I was listening to the going through the tour today, one thing that really was highlighted to me and occurred to me tonight was that knowing my story and my people's story and hearing about your story, one thing stands out the most is that we are both survivors. And let us continue that partnership for years to come. Thank you very much.